Okay, folks, it's 9 a.m. and we're going to start the day 2 of the submissions into our long-term plan. Just remind everybody to speak into the microphone so the people at the back can hear what is being said. And we are live now. And just remind you of the fire exits where the toilets are and drop cover and hold with an earthquake. So we'll start right away with submitter number 75. Al.
If I may, Your Worship, I'd just like to declare an interest in, as Chair of Arts, Marahiku, a conflict of interest over the submission.
Okay, thank you. That's 217. Thanks for that, Councillor. Right, first submitter is submitter number 75, Al Wilson. Just, thank you, Al.
Your Worship, councillors, thanks for this opportunity today. If you're reading the submission, I'm going to start a bit back to front. Building Act, we need a lot more housing. Just as things progress, if you could lobby for change to facilitate more building, make it easier. You might be hamstrung by government requirements at the moment, but just try and make it easier for everybody. Climate change. We've all known about this for 20 years, but our current state doesn't really reflect on this. It appears we're just like the rest of New Zealand and are exposed by a lack of action. But loosely connected to that, when council gets new premises, it would be good if you could use more sustainable options like wood and LVL rather than buying into the big concrete thing. Landscapes, if you're going to wield the big stick, I realise you're going to have to develop policy and stuff, but if you're going to wield the big stick and say you don't want pine plantations, just look backward as well and look at all the green pastures that used to be forest. Pine plantations have good biodiversity values, and they may not always remain in pine. And that sort of leads into the national policy statement for biodiversity. Just encourage and facilitate improvements. Yeah. So the thing on everyone's mind really is rates at the moment. And the thing driving it appears to be infrastructure. We clearly haven't maintained our assets to a sufficient level. The options are increase the available funds from rates, reduce the levels of service, or a combination of those. Think long and hard about the extras, the nice to haves like the cycle track, especially when money's tight. But the proposed increases, 10% or more, it's a big lump, and it's pretty hard on a lot of people. So some have got the money to afford those increases, but a lot don't. So getting back to securing more funding, the only way you can do it is, as you've alluded to, is rates. The rating model operates on tonnage. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it, but there's a big chunk of freight that's not accounted for within the model. I'm speaking here today on my own account, but previously submitters have raised that point. You say the data's not available to include it. It is. And I've tabled some information today, one being the part of the National Freight Demand Study. Now that's published regularly, and do you have copies of my tabled information? No. I'm not sure if the highlighted item is visible.
I certainly haven't seen it.
But anyway, within there, it indicates Southland data of 290,000 tonnes. And so that can easily be included in the rating rate model. Another item tabled is from Dairy NZ. There's often case studies and things, and they pretty well always indicate supplementary data. It's not always the same every year, but all those model farms have that data, and that's one of those things there. So if you include those two things, those 290,000 tonnes and supplementary feed, I've just plucked a number of 1 bale per animal per year. I don't even know which animals they'd be, whether they're dairy farms, cows, deer, sheep. But at a guess, I'd say there's at least 926,000 tonnes missing from the roading rate model. Not great on maths, but if you only include the 290,000 tonnes and you use data from the 2014-15 long-term plan, I think it was, it's tabled anyway, that would come to 7.5% extra. So you're looking at $1 million, maybe $2 million that you're foregoing by not including it in the roading rate model. That's a lot of money, and in my view, it's irresponsible not to include it. It's unfair on all those ratepayers that have to carry that cost. So, yeah, so that's I guess that's about it, really. If you do what you always do, you're going to get what you always get. If you don't charge enough, you're never going to have enough money. Sure, somebody won't be wanting to pay for it, but all those poor people in Tuatapere and different places, they're not wanting to pay 18% or whatever, you know, and a lot of them don't have the money to do it. So is it really right to take all this extra money for cycle trails and airports and bridges and climate change effects, you know, flooding? Yeah. So just, I realise nothing will change this year. You know, like what's put forward in the plan doesn't change. I've been to a number of these over the years, and very rarely is any changes made, but you need to think about it going forward. In coming years, plan for it and get it in next year. So if there's any questions that you think I might be able to
Thank you
help
for that. Are there any questions of our Councillor Duffy?
One point, just from reading your submission, Alistair, and the 636,000 animals you're talking about in the equating to a bale of bardage for each. So I presume, I won't go into how those figures come to, but I'm just wondering if that actually takes account of the fact that a whole lot of supplementary feed that's made is actually made and stays on the farm it's made on.
Yes, that came from a, I think, Environment Southland, not all statistics figure about number of animals in Southland. But yes, a lot of it does stay on the farm. But if you look at that model, a lot of it is brought from support blocks, and yeah, you know, like a lot of it travels from one part of a farm to another part of the farm. They don't always go down, you know, their own lanes and things. So, yeah, sure, you can argue it, but I challenge anyone here today to say they've never seen bailage on the side of the road or bailage wagons going down the road. And there are submitters, for instance, number 170, who clearly states there's bailage wagons going down the road. And I challenge anyone to say that they haven't seen them, or bailiffs on the side of the road. I know you have difficulty accounting for it, but it's a problem and someone pays for it. So I'm sorry to be so.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you for your submission.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce.
Next submitter is Chantel Marshall, submitter number 215. Good morning.
Good morning. I didn't come with a lot of notes. I suppose I'm just going to talk from the heart, like most people here did yesterday. We're out between the Tautau and Tuatapere, and we're on a farm out there. And, look, we've got friends, family, everyone all around. And the main point of all of this, I suppose, is Tuatapere, Ojai, Nightcaps, they cannot afford it. And it's just sad. It's really, really sad. They're not going to get the benefit of it. And, when we look at the budget and we see the amount of money spent in things that we just don't, we can't justify, 50,000 to paint a hall, and then we look at it and go, hang on, how much are you guys paying to sit here today? How much does this cost you? Why aren't we in one of these halls? We had to drive 60 k's to get here and just got here on time. That's unreal. And $200,000 in a toilet for Tuatapere. No one at the Tuatapere meeting wanted it. Not one of them. So if they don't want it and they can't afford it, why is it in there? Why are we doing it? I haven't got a lot of stats in front of me or anything like that. To be honest, we've only had a week's notice to come here. We didn't get a lot of time from the plan that was put out either. Half the residents didn't get the plan. They didn't know how to submit anything. They didn't know when the meeting was. So there's a lot of negativity leading up to this. And, we've got to be honest, you haven't got the support or the trust anymore of your people, really. And these are people that have put you here to fight for us, to make it better. But we hear these comments and from yourself saying, we have to take it up with central government. Well, that's what you're here for. Mm-hmm. That's what we voted you to do. It's your job. It's not our job. And you guys have got to take some accountability here and do it for us. You've got to fight for us. That's why we've got you here. And that's on all counts, I've got sort of, some things, and you say 10%, and it's totally misleading the public, and the people that don't look into it deeply aren't on Facebook. I've got most of my knowledge from Facebook groups, because obviously we're out in the middle of nowhere. We don't sit in an office and talk to each other every day. And a lot of them residents don't have that. They don't have Facebook. They don't know how. So they don't get all the information. Thousands of page documents. I haven't read it all. I don't have time. I've spent the last week doing my own budget, and mine's not looking good. I've got bridge, I've got fences that need repaired, and we haven't got the money. We're in venison. And there's not the money. I can't go to line and say, you have to pay me an extra $1 a kg this year because I need to fix some stuff. It doesn't work that way. But you guys have actually got the money. It's just not been spent wisely. And I honestly believe that it needs a shake-up. It does need a shake-up. 7 years ago, I was in the corporate world, and I was sitting on a good wicket, absolutely, but it was a pretty cruisy job, and I didn't like it. I knew I wasn't earning my wage, and so I left. Absolutely, packed up my car, left, came down and studied for 2 years, and I stayed here. And now, married to a farmer, together with a farmer, I've got a baby, But if you don't like it, if you haven't got that drive or that fight anymore, and you don't love what you do, move over. Let the next one up. Do it. Because there's someone else just waiting for you to retire sometimes, unfortunately, But go do something that you do love then, and let that next one come up and fight. And they'll fight for us, and they'll, go through that budget with a fine-tooth comb. You've got to move it aside. You can't just keep asking more. And if you did anyone go to the toilets? I think it was when it was your other panel, the toilets in Tuatapere, you were asked to go have a look at them. You want to build all new ones, and we've got one that's just becoming, shocking. But we don't, and that's still, we've got to spend a whole lot of money on that one and build a whole new one. But I asked, did anyone even go there? All the Tuatapere residents asked them to. Please just go there and have a look. Walk around. I don't know if anyone did, but So yeah, the whole 10%, it is misleading to people. Tick this, tick that, the long-term plan, that, and it's 17% for these people. Tuatapere is 17%. Now say it how it is and let them, because all they see is what you send in the mail. They don't see someone else going through your 1,000-page document and drawing all of this out. It's tough. It's tough. What else have I got? That's about all. Yeah. But yeah, my biggest thing is if you don't have the drive and the fight anymore, then let someone else. The amount of money that you spend on administration, hire someone to come in. You know, business analyst, come in, give it a shake up, find out who's earning their money and who's not. And if they're not, they can go to something else. Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you. Are you sure you've got everything? Because we have got time if you haven't
No,
missed anything.
that's all.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Byers.
Thank you. Just a comment really, Chantal. Thank you very much. That's a very good submission and yeah, hopefully the message is getting through to the council that the people are hurting and these rates rises are coming at a pretty poor time. So yes, I agree. There's some major change needs to happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. Daryl Carr, submitted number 214. Is Daryl here? Yep.
Good morning.
Good morning, Daryl.
Yeah, well, I haven't got any notes either, but I was just pretty much on the same page as Sean. We had a meeting at our farm yesterday, so mine was on other things, but I was talking to a lot of my mates in that meeting, and there I said to them, who put submissions in? And I won't repeat what most of them said, what the causes. It wasn't nice. It wasn't good. Now, you pull probably nice people outside here in this, but as far as I'm concerned, the Southland District Council needs to pull its fucking head in.
Hey, just watch the language, sorry.
Sorry.
Well, you're going out live?
Yeah.
Okay.
It needs to pull its head in. It's a bit of a joke when, you know, we do budgets. There's things you've got to prioritise on. And I mean, what really got me up when I went to the Tuatapere meeting was, Gary, you did really good things for Tuatapere when you're a police officer out there. You know, everyone looked up to you. Everyone thought you were a really good person. And you did things for when you're at the Born Lodge and that, you know, and you didn't even turn up to the meeting out there. You know, like I'm sure a lot of people would have liked to see you and ask you questions.
I couldn't be everywhere, but
Yeah, no, it's all right. But yeah, you just got to prioritise, you know. Tiwaiwai Lagoon toilet. I mean, really? Come on. It's just you know, and like Sean said, why are we here? Why are we at Ascot Park? This is a Southland District thing. It's not an Invercargill City Council thing. You know, we pay money to keep those halls going, public libraries, everything. Well, there's a district office, Southland District office at Atarao. We could have been there. It's, it's just, it's not well run, and it does need a shake up. And, you know, there's not many people our age, you know, doing these sorts of things. It was 260 submissions, from what I can gather. Yeah, you know, like there's a lot of mates. I didn't know it was, when was that meeting? Didn't see it, you know. It needs to be focused more on younger aged people that are moving forward, you know, that want to move forward in the district. It's just, you really got to go through those budgets and just take out stuff that doesn't need, you know. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with a new toilet in the district or to keep tourism happy, but at the moment, tourism's not here. It's not going to be here for another couple of years, realistically. So that money can be spent elsewhere. You know, bridges, people need to get produce to farms, off their farms, I mean, into markets. And I know there's huge infrastructure pressure with the dairy boom and that in the district, but that's something we've known that for quite a long time. And it just needs to be, just need to go through those budgets and, and that's what I've got to say, really. So,
thank you, Daryl.
questions?
Would have come from my way, but I've got them.
How are you?
Good.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming in with your submission. I'm a farmer. I'm a
Yeah.
sheep and beef farmer in the Laura Gorge, and we've had to have a huge revamp, so I totally understand, but I do know the venison industry's been hit really, really hard.
Yep.
And I just thank so much for coming in today and
Yeah.
sharing your thoughts. We'll take them on board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Owen.
Kia ora, thank you for coming in as well. Just a quick question for you. Do you have any advice to council with regards to how to communicate? You said that a lot of people in your peer group didn't know about what was going on with the LTP. Do you have any feedback on how we could do it better?
Because we don't get a newspaper anymore because there's not much in it. So we're more or less on Facebook. So, you know, like the younger generation is all on Facebook and apps and all this. So potentially there's room for a Southland Facebook app, district council app, or
We have a Facebook.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not up to, how to reach those people, but you need to, like Sean said, get someone in and say, righto, how are we going to reach these people that, there is issues there that need to be resolved, and it's not my job. It's your job to find the resolution to fix these problems. Yeah.
We certainly have a Facebook page and it does get followed.
Yeah. Well, I probably don't know about it,
no,
but
it's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you for your submission. So, I mean, it's tough doing budgets in these times. So if you were sitting in our seat, what areas would you not like to see cuts in, but would be prepared to see cuts in, and what are non-negotiables for you?
Well, I'd think if I was sitting in your position, thinking, looking at the budget, thinking there's all this money, we got to, first thing would be gone was I'd put a freeze on for 5 years on pay increases. And then I'll go through what do we need to do? We need to get vehicles on the roads. We need to keep vehicles going on the road. So your bridges is your main priority. Your toilets, they can get hold of. Playgrounds, they can get held off. Just little bits and pieces all the way through. It all adds up. Like the Eastern Bush water, $4 million. Hey, from what I understand, the water's still coming out of the tap. So, it's going to cost $4 million to fix. That one I'm not sure on, but there's a lot of other things that you can just, because I can't remember, because I looked through it to a Tapree, but you just need to prioritise things and but no, I'd say, you look at your costs where you can cut, that's not going to affect us. The wages are not going to affect us. It's probably a lot of you guys have got other jobs or doing something else, but, 17%, 10% increase for us when you sit there and get a pay increases doesn't look good. If you come out and it was in the paper and said, Southland District Council's taken the wage freeze for 3 years or 2 years, we might think, oh, geez, we've actually done something. We feel a wee bit better. Yeah. It's all about making the taxpayer feel good and, and thinking that yous are on our side, because you should be on our side. We don't want to, we got the government breathing down our neck, and I hate Labor, but that's the fact though, their side got to work under their rules. So it's good to have you guys on our side as well. And
we have to work under their rules too.
Yeah. But no, it's just,
Councillor Harper.
Yes, Daryl, you spoke before about getting more younger people on board. Have you got any suggestions how we might do this? I could go back to my 25, 26 years on council community board, and I would think in the Tuatapi area, we've probably had not even a handful of people under 40 that have actually put their name forward. So have you got any solution to this or any ideas?
Not really. It's just, you put me on the spot a wee bit, but there's got to be someone out there that wants to do it. I mean, I think everyone's expectation, like in our group, was like, bunch of muppets. What's the point? They don't listen anyway, Like, I think if people started to listen, and it starts at the top, if they took some people's ideas on and come out and said, we had this meeting, we had these things, we've taken these on board, we're going to change things because this was a good submission, we'll change that. He had a good idea, we'll change that. That way people starts to turn and come towards you guys and go, well, actually I might go and join, or, it's, at the moment there's black and white. We need to have a grey in there as well somewhere. Yeah, in the middle. I don't know, it's, Yeah.
Thanks, Daryl. Councillor
Darryl, I
Duffy.
just wondered if you know, and You probably don't. But for the last few years, we've been resealing 7 kilometres a year of our sealed roading network.
Yep.
And we needed to be doing 28 to,
Yep.
to keep up the cycle.
Yep.
And so we've been doing that for some time, and sort of because we tried to keep rates down and because we tried to live within our means with our funding from government, etc.
Yep.
We sort of reach a point where that's not sort of really, can't keep on doing that forever.
Yep.
So that sort of thing leads to the position we get ourselves in now.
Yep.
So there's a bit to understand about it all, but
Yeah, there is, and I understand money has to be spent, but when you come out, it's almost like, I know, oh shit, we haven't been spending enough all these years, and all of a sudden we've got all this shit to do, like it's.
And the timing's terrible.
Timing is terrible, and it's just going to be like, well, we're just going to have to tough it out for a couple of years. At least everyone now knows it's like last year. Was there any indication that the rates could rise by 17%? Last year or the year before?
Well, not until we talked to our communities to find out what they wanted is the reason why
Yeah.
the projects.
But I think, like if everyone goes, if you come out today and said, on 5 years' time, our rates have got to be, if this is what your farms or your house is worth, whatever, this is what your rates is going to be. It gives everyone enough time to say, yeah, well, you're probably right. We do need to increase it, but it's not such a big shock.
Right.
Yeah. And people can plan towards that. Gives them time to either sell their house or try and work out how they're going to do bits and pieces. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your submission, Daryl. And the reason we didn't go out anywhere else is the logistics of it was just crazy. So,
Yeah. Sorry for the language too.
thank you for your apology.
Thank you very much.
Bit of passion there. Next submitter is Leanne from Public Health South, submitted 169. Leanne here? No. Nathan and Brendan. That's Brendan. Submitter 175, page 641 from Sport Southland. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou, ko Brendan McDermott, Taka Ingoa, ko Taku Mahi, Chief Executive of Sport Southland. Firstly, I'd like to thank you and congratulate you and your team on what you do for the Southland District. I'm sure the tough decisions that are made and the work being done is often taken for granted. So I want to thank you for the investment you make, particularly to allow people in the region to be active through play, active recreation and sport. As two different organisations, I believe that we have the same kaupapa. We both want happy, healthy, connected people and communities that can thrive. Specifically, Sport Southland exists for the purpose of enhancing individual and community wellbeing through being active. And I believe the title of your consultation document is so right. It's time. It's time. It's time to make the important changes to start reducing inactivity and supporting our community to enjoy the many benefits that come from being active and being well. So whilst a lot of the large dollar investments often involve assets and infrastructure, it's important not to forget about investing in wellbeing to ensure that we have these happy, healthy and connected people in our communities who will continue to use these assets for years to come. Through our existing relationships, we thank you for your existing investment into the SDC holiday program, the active transport role and swim safe program, and we're keen to grow this relationship through two other opportunities. Last year we pitched to you that we think we can do a whole lot more with a bit more investment, particularly with regard to the holiday program, a program that runs for 2 weeks a year and has some great outcomes for our tamariki. We believe a more effective option is for us to employ a role, either 0.5 or 1 FTE, for an additional 30 to 70K per year, which will allow us not only to deliver the holiday program outcomes, but activate the community on an ongoing basis all year round. Focused on SDC areas only, this role would provide better accessibility and opportunities for the SDC residents. The data shows that SDC residents have slightly lower rates than the rest of Southland in terms of activity, and they also differ in the way they participate. So we believe a dedicated role that understands the region would help reverse these rates. To complement this, we are currently negotiating with Sport New Zealand to invest central government money of approximately $500,000 to support a workforce that would employ around 4 to 5 FTE to work alongside primary schools in the SDC area over the period 2022-2023, with the aim of improving tamariki wellbeing through healthy eating, drinking and quality physical activity. Your commitment would complement the central government funding, allowing us to reach further than just primary school space and ensure there is dedicated effort put on the SDC residents and the Southland District community. Secondly, we've been working alongside your team with the development of the Southland Regional Spaces and Places strategy, which is now ready for adoption and endorsement by all organisations involved. One of the key successes of the project to date has been the positive conversations and the sharing of information that has happened collectively between the councils, funders and ourselves. We now have a strategy, a good stocktake of facilities and good momentum of working together. It is key that we continue this mahi, and we propose that we all invest in a small workforce to keep the strategy alive and the actions alive and ensure that we continue to have good usage and participation data to enable us to make good decisions about our assets in the future. The Sport Southland board have adopted the strategy. We've allocated $50,000 a year and are looking to councils and funders to also come on board to support this over the next period to ensure the regional space and places strategy is implemented well and doesn't just become another strategy on the shelf. Your commitment would be $25,000 per annum and would help support 2 roles, a spaces and places role and a data coordination role. After hearing the last 2 submitters and looking at the clip from yesterday, there's a lot of people out there hurting. And I think that's why the role of sport and physical activity plays such a crucial role when communities are hurting. And we've just got to look at other examples like Christchurch through the earthquake and those sort of things. So in closing, I just want to reiterate my thanks for your time, your investment and commitment to the people of the Southland District. And Sport Southland looks forward to growing our partnership with you and growing partnerships with the community where we work together for a better Southland and a more active Southland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the submission. Any questions? Councillor Menzies.
Thank you for your submission. Yesterday,
Sorry.
we heard submissions from Trails Trust and also about cycleways. I'm just wondering about your connection when you're talking, that's about physical activity for our local communities as well as the tourists coming in. So in terms of your regional spaces and strategy, what's the connection that you have as an organisation with the submissions that were made yesterday around those areas?
Yeah, so the spaces and places strategy would obviously include things like trails and that sort of thing. There's also obviously a regional cycle strategy which include those trails. So we're not trying to duplicate between those two. We actually worked alongside the Field and Trails Trust a wee bit, actually a couple of years ago, supporting them around a submission where they got celebrated as part of an awards evening as part of the Sport NZ Awards. So we have worked alongside them. We think with having dedicated roles like this, though, we can actually, Southern District's quite a wide region, and if we know better what's going on in the region, we can better support those communities.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that the participation rates in Southland are lower, in Southland District are lower than others. I mean, are you able to pinpoint where that is and what's being done to improve that?
Yeah, I think some of that's got to do with, so the stats we're using is Active New Zealand survey stats from Sport New Zealand. We think some of that's got to do with a lot of the workforce in the Southern District are working on farms and things, so they already have physically active roles, so therefore they're not choosing outside of that to perhaps do active recreation or sport. But what we do know, and I remember watching a clip on TV last year, a farmer around the Lumsden area who was physically active all day, working on the farm, but mental health was such a big issue. And until he actually got out and was choosing to do physical activity beyond just his work, made a massive influence. So that's the sort of stuff we're talking about, is how we can get people away from their their physically active jobs and actually get them choosing to be physically active with their children, with their families and their communities more often.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your submission. Thank you. So is Leanne here from Public Health South? Oh, okay. No, cool. I've been advised. It's all good. Submitter 223, R&A Johnston. Thank you.
Different on the other side of the microphone. Good morning. I'm Ravina. And I just wanted to say a couple of things first. That a conflict of interest I have is just through creative communities, but I don't take any remuneration for that anyway. And thank you for the opportunity to talk. Most of you probably have seen me around. I go to plenty of meetings. So we farm on 515 hectares. 400 hectares is hill country under the STC territory, and 2 parcels, 1 on each side, 115 hectares are in the Gore district. So we're 10 kilometres from Gore. We're sheep and beef and just farming alone ourselves, and we've got a 14-year-old son who's very keen to basically farm the future, and especially on hill country. We're basically right next door to a recreational pathway, the Croydon Bush, which I think you guys have seen in the Hokanuis. And we're finally in that community governance area now under the Arete Community Board that was basically without a local community board for decades. So it's very pleasing to be back into some form of that, but we just probably still feel like we're sort of not in touch with that enough yet. So we could still work on that area, but also I need to probably engage a lot more as well. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses as well. In my observation, that voice is still centred around a lot of residential urban areas. So I'd like to see, just like that gentleman earlier, I would like to see probably more council engagement with rural. Maybe, there's a lot of RMPP groups that's just come to an end, but there still is some farm discussion groups. More councillors maybe coming to meetings and actually saying getting more people engaged. I've been engaged with local government probably for 12 years now because I was forced to. And also a guy from Iceland basically encouraged us to get involved because local government rules everything you do in life. So that was at a Otago University meeting. So that made me understand and can understand that everything I do is related to local government or central government. So it's vital that we do engage. We're basically in the headwaters of the Waimumu area. I do believe council should be more of a private entity. If it was a private entity, at the moment where things have been tough, yes, if it was a private entity, shareholders would be able to leave. I think there needs to be definitely more local government and central government looking over our local government a lot more, and I'll go into a bit more detail with that further down. I believe that with so much infrastructure basically sort of feels like it's been put on the back burner, and that delivery hasn't sort of happened. And the bridge thing was sort of pretty horrendous. But I do come from an area from Oxford and North Canterbury as well. I lived there for a while, and I'm used to going through fords. For me, that bridge up at Longridge, where my husband was 18 years ago plus, and 3 generations, that basically served only 3 people. It must have been in a terrible state of repair, but for 3 people, it's a big cost. And then basically, it's having to be reassessed again, which is, a big failing. We shouldn't be having failings and should be in that state as well. But there was a lot of bridges I have seen that, down to 20%. So we do need a different mechanism for delivery. And the Bill report states, well, Nana Ganesh is basically formerly in Burl, and the New Zealand Productivity Commission is basically looking at gains. New Zealand's productivity is only 40% per hour under the OECD countries. So we've got a long way to go in productivity. And that's just obviously over New Zealand's overall productivity, not just local government or anything like that. So I wouldn't mind Productivity Commission to look at local government. He basically says that wealth in monetary sense doesn't mean it's necessarily more productive, and that's sort of like housing, and farms, just because it's worth more doesn't mean it's any more productive. And I basically put in here that, since we've been there 18 years, our farm has basically increased in value by double, but doesn't mean our productivity is doubled. I don't know if residential houses in all areas have doubled, but it is a drain, basically, rates, but for us, basically, increasing rates means that you have to take it from somewhere else. I put in here that with COVID, and then this year, basically, COVID crossing over to this year, you would have seen on TV this morning problems with containers. Basically, we've lost 25% of our income in this financial year for 2020-21. So you've got to pinch it from somewhere else. So that means weeds and pests, maintenance, and repairing fencing. It was great hearing those, and I'm thankful that those people have come from Tuatapere, because it's very humbling hearing their stories. And at times in farming, they've said, well, you can basically go for a community service card, because we're sheep and beef, which is basically the poorer cousin, especially in hill country. And I've just basically said to IRD, I do not want a community service card, because there's other people that are doing it much harder than myself. How can I compare myself to someone like that? And my mum is one of those people as well, living in a council building in Clutha District, which has got one of the lowest rate increases coming up. And I also come from Clinton, which has a small community where I grew up, and basically some of the most expensive rates because low population and has always had water issues. As I said before, we're in the headwaters of the Waimea Stream. We've got 3 QE2 bush covenants. We've had them for quite some time, since 2010. They're in the Southland District Territory, and we have several wetlands, one in each territory. We've been farming biologically for several decades and using regenerative techniques, which suits our property well. We've less than 10 hectares in pines and 3 plantations. We've used woofers that are touring the country to complement our business. We've had an Airbnb at home just as a hobby, just for the main events for Southland, but we now have 4 Airbnbs around us, so we basically don't have as much, we don't push that one as much now, because we've got so much more competition. But we have been divesting and changing and evolving in the last 18 years. So where we are, my husband's been farming there for 18 years with myself and my son, and I said the value basically has increased by double, but the cash flow hasn't doubled. Farming struggles are no surprise to my husband, but I'm often the problem solver in our unit, formerly growing up in Clinton. I talked about basically decreasing costs. So basically we'd use less and less contractors to mitigate those rising costs, and hopefully land use change. We will have to basically do some more trees to basically help subsidise our future. And native trees, I think it was Environment Southland said that native trees are extremely expensive, about 20k per hectare, so that's a bit of an issue. So there needs to be some more subsidy basically to plant native trees, because it would make sense for us to plant more native trees being next door to the Haumori Reserve, Croydon. The traditional roles of councils needs to change, I think. It hasn't served us well. And now at the edge of a cliff, it feels like, and it's once in a lifetime opportunity for us now. Just recently, we've got the local government coming out, Manaia Mahuta, saying that so before the end of this year, they're looking at local government, so we should have an idea where things are heading. So I don't think necessarily we need to basically, as like yesterday, there were many people were sort of asking for a moratorium but not saying that word. We need to basically see what's going to happen at the end of this year. And you've also got, within the next month, you've got the Three Waters. So I've heard Tracy Hicks say that basically, council's role is going to change. So and I've worked at the statistics of population bits and pieces. I really think that we need to amalgamate. And I've been hearing that in the last 24 hours. So yeah, I talked about basically 2020 and 21, the accumulation of impacts. And basically we had the floods, because we're boundary on Gore, I think we had the floods. We had basically damage to infrastructure, even ourselves in hill country for that. We had COVID, and then we basically also had our local bank basically changing and exiting agriculture, which basically meant we had to change banks after 150 years basically serving the agriculture community. And then basically we had the second biggest snowfall in our lambing period. So the last 24 months is definitely challenging, and will continue to evolve as well. In the UK, they are moving to a fairer system, removing subsidies from farmers that basically tend to be land banking within 5 to 7 years. That's that removal, and they're rewarding them for actions in biodiversity and climate change mitigation techniques. Melissa Clark-Reynolds, she came and talked in Southland as well, but sheep and beef farms have 25% of the nation's biodiversity. We've got Kiwi2 covenants, but there's no real meaningful reward basically having Kiwi2 covenants. We get a little bit that basically, obviously you probably realise that Kiwi2 covenants are basically rates relief. They don't go into that, but that's only beneficial if you've got a substantial Kiwi2 too. Farming is incredibly volatile, and a lot of you are basically associated to farming, and its changes are constant, but we just all carry on. Not everyone makes it through the stresses of farming, and I'm hearing that the younger generation are finding it even tougher because they haven't got history. Our rural communities are becoming more and more disenfranchised. The urban and rural divide will widen further in south, with farmers limiting access and taking matters into their own hands. And you may hear about that a bit more later today. From the 1980s, land use developments have changed, and substantial, dairy increased basically land use. I think there's going to be, we already know that there's going to be a massive change in land use as well with equity partnerships. So basically the family farm is going to change. So you're going to have another equity partnership, and that hasn't always served the environment and the community well. So just basically want you to think about that. So last year was the biggest year we've ever paid in rates. And I said to you guys that basically we take care of our own water. We take, our waste, basically we have to take it either to Riversdale or Gore. Often Riversdale is full, so we have to just leave it in sacks. And yes, basically you guys basically take care of it from there. But we basically have always recycled, repurposed and reused. And we've spent 2 decades basically looking after the environment. So we put minimal amount into a sheep hole. And we've got an incinerator as well. The baby boomers are supposedly the wealthiest generation and peaking in 2020. They are downsizing or upsizing depending and basically a lot of them are also basically having to build homes, invest with their children. And I was seeing also just lately that farms are going to basically invest into more residential, basically as a way of succession, as a way to move forward for them. All we're asking for, everyone's asking for, is fairness and use pays. I mean, Southland is a commodity market, which we need to move away from dairy and tourism. I don't necessarily agree. As a Green, I don't think tourism will be what it was, and tourism basically definitely needs to pay for its way. I commend our current government for bringing back the four well-beings, but I still think rates, burdens and bits and pieces will basically impact on the four well-beings. Moving into the future, it's about quality, not quantity, and I'm willing to sacrifice luxuries, tar sealed roads, bridges, parks, libraries, swimming pools, halls, because we can't have what we've had. I think that's, unless there's a massive change. Southland wants to grow its population, which would help mitigate, but I can't see that happening because it's awfully cold. The housing down here in Southland, like FMG basically said, the guy that deals with insurance claims says that down here, compared to Christchurch, things are 50% dearer in Southland than Canterbury. So, you know what, people come down here and you often hear newbies saying, oh, the rates are so much more expensive than elsewhere. So how do we get the population down here and stay? I think we need to get off the trajectory and reduce our assets. Council has overwhelmed itself and its ratepayers. I still think that, I mentioned earlier, productivity commissions should look at councils and efficiencies. So any questions, welcome.
Thank you for your submission. Any questions? I was wondering, are you able to leave a copy of that with us? Like, I've written down some notes, but I couldn't keep up with all of it.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Councillor Kramer has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent submission. Thanks very much and for your time. Just your last comment with regards to reducing assets. Which sort of assets do you think we should be reducing?
Well, there's cheaper ways to do tar seal. I think it was the Ottoman way.
Auto seal?
Yeah. And Gore, well, I discovered about Clutha was doing sort of like a, because we are getting an increase of lifestyle blocks, and there's issues with the dust. So Clutha basically, I don't know if they got it from somewhere else, but they were basically doing a rates thing with costs of tar seal, so a partnership with and paying that off. That's one way to do that. But for me, I'm lucky. I have got a few vehicles, small vehicles and big vehicles, and if we've got four-wheel drives, us rural guys can basically put up with more gravel roads, even though I'd like to see the speed limit absolutely change on gravel roads, because gravel roads are not suitable. I often complain to Gore because they basically deal with our two roads rather than STC, but the corners basically need widened. We've just currently had 20 trucks a day from the Southwoods development at the back, which is horrendous miles up the way, and they've been splitting the traffic to basically carry it across the our roading pathways. So, and bridges, that's a hard one. We have to basically look globally. Gary's been to Norway, so we basically need to look at different ways of doing stuff cheaper. I mean, I know Gore Council basically used concrete infrastructure for it was a little bridge there, but there has been substantial trucking use on the road. Yeah, but so basically roads I think we probably want a better understanding who's using those bridges, and maybe we'll have to take it further. Because I've got different vehicles, I usually have to have one or two wheel alignments a year, shocks, struts, so willing to go without, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, cool.
Okay, there don't appear to be any other questions. Thank you for your submission, and if you can leave a copy, would be great. Thank you. Next submitter is Ian Smith, connecting via Zoom. Submitter 139.
Are we on? Are we on?
Not quite yet. Just, yep, you're there now. Can you see and hear us okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Good, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And It's been interesting to hear the submitters previous to Kevin, where they come from. And I'd also like to thank the councillors for what work they are doing for us and the community boards as we go.
You might have to just come a wee bit closer to your microphone, sorry.
I'm just at a... Is that better?
That's great, thank you.
I'll try and hold that there. So thank you to everybody anyway so far, and I think some of you may have heard that.
Yep.
In my opening, I agree with reservation, the three cost structures you are recommending from the council, but I do say in the background that we, especially in the outlying rural areas, are facing more and more depopulation and more amalgamation of farms. So I think get more and more difficult to maintain the roads. That's quite noisy with me here. Is it all right with you there?
It's okay. You're breaking up a little bit, but we've got you so far.
Got me so far, right. Depopulation in outlying areas is a great concern to mine, and I cannot see a way forward to make it better. And being a family farm that we've just sold part of, and none of our 4 children wanting to come home because their income stream is better elsewhere, I can't hold it in our department. Now, there's 3 other main things I want to talk about is subdivision entranceways, compliance costs, and I want to talk about our local directory. I'll explain that later. But in going through all this, I have to say thank you for some of the issues I've been dealing with, the help of staff and pointed in the right direction. I found it very friendly and cooperative. But one thing I'd like to open up with, in January you had a survey, and I'm not sure who put the survey together, but I've been dealing with a few people on council, and I got 2 shots at the survey by call back. One of them on the survey, who beat the survey, and one of the questions said, are you happy with what the council has delivered, and would you go back to the council for that service? And that was the basic cause of the question. And my answer to that was a nothing question, because we have no choices in the survey, no choices who we go to for roading, for rates, for all these other council monopolised things. And I'm not wanting to change from the council, but what I'd like you somewhere in the council to, if you have a survey again, is to vet the survey, because to me it was a nothing question. It was sort of almost a laughing stock question. I'm not sure what happened with that one. So that's just on the by. I'd just like you to have a look at all that. And the first survey got me, I said it was nothing question. I had somebody from council very friendly bring up and say to me, oh yes, that was right. And a week later I got the same survey with the same question. So somebody wasn't moving at that time, or you couldn't change. So 3 main subdivision and entranceways, and I've had a bit to do with this lately, because we take 200 metres off the far end, 2 square metres off the far end of a 130-acre property, but I had to upgrade the road entranceway to a sealed entranceway on a separate road. Now that entranceway, because of what has happened, is going to be used a lot less than it ever was. And the question I have is that I can see it growing grass through it in the next 5 or 7 years, because it won't be used at all. The reason I was given for why it had to be upgraded, somebody could put a house in there. And I said we'd have to go for another consent if we got a house, or somebody put a house in there, because there wasn't enough vision on the road to have an entranceway for a road line entranceway to a houseway. So your rules said to me when I did it a few years ago, they had 200 clear metres of sealed roadway each way before I could use a house entranceway. So I'm just saying an implication, but I'm saying the cost of that entranceway is between $5,000 and $6,000. I did get it downgraded, but I want the council to look at each case in its merit, and whether it's a subdivision in some of the rural towns as opposed to a little subdivision in a rural country farm. The other thing is compliance costs, and And the one thing I just want to go through, and I'm not sure how much room you've got to move on this, but I've just been involved in the historical information board for the local community. It's about a $12,000 total job, including without voluntary labour, and it's cost us over $1,400 in compliance costs. A resource management consent cost $1,150 from council for this little information board of 6 square metres of signage that is not even facing the road. It's sitting by the community centre, and it's cost $350 for an exemption from building consent because it was under 10 square metres. And we felt the building was built to a reasonable standard beforehand, the plans. However, I'm just saying that that's been quite a mission, not to count all the community time that went into providing that information. The third thing I'd like to talk about is a local directory. And with putting up this information centre, I see other information centres around the district, and we've got a historical information centre going up. I see local road information, and I see information at local cemeteries. So I'm suggesting that the council get together with Great South and look at a way of making these available on the internet and grouping them in the right grouping, and then at each information point have a sticker on it that says go to this site and you will be taken around the community to these historical information plaques or historic information. And I see that as a way of helping the local rural people get back in touch with their previous rural people interested in the rural area. So with doing that, I'm happy to talk to somebody later on about that and just put ideas forward. But I don't see any link that takes people to these local information or historic information community things. And I don't see any expensive exercise. So basically, with that, I heard one gentleman talk about toilets, and maybe we shouldn't keep the toilets upgraded. But being a more elderly myself now, I actually seem to need the rural community toilets more often than I used to. So I am a district person who uses them when I have to. So I think we need to keep some around there that is for the benefit of us who need them. Thank you for that, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions? There don't appear to be any questions, Ian, so thank you very much for your submission, and thanks for taking the time to come in on Zoom.
Sorry about this, the noise. Goodbye.
No, that's great. Thank you. Just take them off. So the next submitter is Les Gowan. Is Les here? 203. Les's submission is on submitter number 203.
Good morning, everyone. You can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So if you look at the long-term consultation plan for 2018 and 2021, the main theme is that a lot of Southland's essential infrastructure is approaching its use-by date. Now, this is nothing new, nor is it unique to Southland. Essential infrastructure has been ignored for a long time by many councils throughout New Zealand. Yeah, the problem now is how to finance the maintenance and rebuilds without bleeding the ratepayers to death. So I live in Te Anau with my wife. I'm on the superannuation now. My wife has a full-time job at one of the holiday parks, but it's not a 40-hour-week job. So between us, our combined income is still well below the New Zealand median income. And just above the threshold for the rates rebate, so we're sort of stuck there. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I have a bit of a problem with your documents. Just now, this brings your planning into question. In the 2018 document, the proposed rate for 2021-22, the rate increase was going to be 1.5%. 3 years later, we have a rate increase of just over 10%, and for Te Ao now 12%. You know, I have to question how competent councils are at planning. If there's such a discrepancy in 3 years, and you're trying to forecast 10 years ahead, yeah, it's, you know, it's got me wondering anyway. Yeah, now, did someone give you these graphs? Yeah. What your graphs don't show, and what a lot of people, just about everyone I've spoken to in Te Ao now doesn't understand is that rates compound. So your proposed rate increases just above 10, dropping down, but in reality, in 10 years' time, they will be 79% above what we're paying now, which is a huge increase. Yeah, for us, ours will go from about 2,700 up to nearly $5,000. So, yeah, I think those increases are insidious, and you know, long term they're heading way higher than inflation or income rises. We don't know what inflation's going to be for that time, but the previous 10 years inflation was 15% for the 10-year period. It's likely to be something similar, so that's your gap between inflation and what the council is proposing to collect for rates. Yeah, so what to do about it? Yeah, the main needs council provides are roads, bridges, water and wastewater infrastructure. Now, these are absolutely essential. And then there are the wants, the would-be nice stuff if we could afford it. Now, to me, the bottom line is we're going to have to forgo a lot of the wants. The essentials must take priority. Now, I've just taken out of my own community board some of the proposed projects. And what could be classified as a need is the airport runway reseal. Even though we don't get a lot of benefit from the airport, it's there now and it has to be maintained, I guess. But and the other thing I'll put down is the Henry Street playground. I wouldn't want to deprive the kids of their playground. But yeah, on the want side, the stuff that would be nice to have, but I don't think we can afford it at this time. Stuff like the Manapuru boat ramp basket replacement, Manapuru walkway realignment, Te Ao urban master plan, Te Ao boat ramp refurbishments, and then we go on to 3 years of Te Ao lakefront town and harbour beautification. Yeah, all those projects come getting on towards $2 million. Now, you take the lakefront town boat harbour beautification. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary at all. Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah, the community boards need to get real and recognise we cannot go on funding a lot of these projects. With Te now, I don't think spending money on beautifying the town and the lakefront isn't going to attract any more tourists. We're the gateway to Fiordland anyways. The tourists will come regardless. So we've already got a very nice lakefront. All it needs is just to be kept clean and tidy. Yeah, so in the past, yeah, rates money in our area has gone into some very expensive projects that have shown little or none of the promised or forecast return. And these are now an ongoing maintenance costs. And the two examples of that are, of course, the airport and the Round the Mountain cycle trail. Yeah, on the other hand, volunteers and community funding have created some wonderful assets which are highly utilised, and the Lions Park, Ivan Wilson Park and the Te Anau Manapuri cycle trail are examples of these. If the community wants something bad enough, they will find a way to fund it without having to, dig into rates money. Now, I'm just going to pick a couple out from the Waihopai Taito Community Board too. Now, you've got down Edendale Wyndham, a drinking fountain, $21,000. Now, that's ridiculous money for a drinking fountain. Yeah. The other two projects for the same community board, the Recreation Reserve project, 410,000, and the multi-use track, 655,000. There's over $1 million. That community's survived quite nicely without those assets up till now. It can probably do without them, and that money could be put towards, the essential infrastructure. Yeah, so in the council's own words, in your document, you say it's becoming increasingly clear that the Southland District Council cannot afford the Southland District cannot afford Southland District at the present level of service and population. This is not new thinking, but it's something that successive councils have failed to act upon. The population base is not going to increase anytime soon, so that only leaves the level of service. And in my opinion, it has to be drastically reprioritised. If the Southland District Council can continue to get the 52% New Zealand Transport Authority subsidy for roading and bridges, I think it's a no-brainer to put as much money as possible into these at the expense of some of the want and nice to have projects. Yeah, so you people, you councillors, you put up your hands, to get into local body politics, and whatever you do, you're going to annoy some people, but just think of the ratepayers who are on the low side of the median income. It's really going to hurt us. And you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And my final thing is, you might even leave a legacy of the council that made Southland District affordable. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. The points you raise are very valid. I just wonder, with the LTP process, it's very good I've got an assistant here because I never remember to put the microphone over. The LTP process, we need to put things in, looking at 10 years, and it's very, very difficult to add later if, things come up as being something to have, but they are quite easy to remove or defer or get other funding for. So a bit like a sort of a long-term budget, you have to think of all the eventualities and sort of put them in, and they may not come to light, but unless they're in there, they can't come to light, sort of thing. So that's sort of the framework we're working under. So while it's really scary, I don't think the reality.
Yeah, okay. I can accept that. Have you any comment though on this huge discrepancy in your planning?
From say previous.
This is out of your 2018 planning document.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 2021 rate rises 1.5, and now just 3 years later, we're looking at over 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, where's the planning in that?
Well, perhaps
there isn't any, is there?
No, some realities come along.
Well, no, that reality hasn't just come along in the last 3 years.
Well, I'm meaning no, you're right. Like the roading and the bridging sort of reached
you've known about it for a long, long time.
Well, we've been
even back in Frana's day. You knew, the council knew that this was coming up.
We've picked up on that, Les, and taken all that on board, but we're not here to debate it now.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Kramer.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Les, good to see you here, and good presentation of your submissions. The question I have for you is that with the aspects of concerns that you've raised with regards to some of the projects within the Fiordland area, have you expressed your concerns to the Fiordland Community Board, who actually identified that they like to see those projects go ahead?
No, I haven't, Abel. But yeah, I guess I've probably been guilty in the past of, just looking at these documents and thinking, oh, well, we'll leave it to other people. But yeah, I would be prepared to come along to the community board and discuss it with them.
Yep, that's a good idea.
It's got me a bit angry, actually. So.
Yep, I can understand that. Thanks.
Okay, there don't appear to be any other questions, so thank you for your submission, Les.
Right, thank you.
Next submitter is submitter 217, Arts Murihiku, Jenny Dyer. Thank you. Hello. Doesn't look like Jenny Dyer.
Morning, everyone. My name's Rebecca.
Sorry,
Evans.
just before you start, Councillor Duffy, you're going to move away from
I declare the interest. Oh, you want to leave the room?
No, just step back from the table. Thank you.
And I'm the Deputy Chair of Arts Murihiku, and I have with me Angela Newell, and she is a new trustee on Arts Murihiku. So we just came really to speak to our submission that we put in. And attached to our submission was the regional arts strategy that we commissioned a couple of years ago and was done with funding from Creative New Zealand. And I guess we just wanted to add to the submission and say that we've mentioned in here around encouraging Southland District Council to form their own arts strategy and wonder whether actually maybe you don't actually need to create your own art strategy. You could just use this one. But also wanted to talk to the fact that Arts Murihiku is keen to support the arts across Southland. And if there's anything that we can do to support the work that you are doing as a council in the arts area, you know, we'd be more than happy to make contact and have a chat with you about what we can do to support the arts.
Sure, thanks, Bex. Ko Angela Newell. Nice to be here. I left Great South at the end of May and have joined Arts Murihiku as a voluntary trustee. So it's nice to sort of step back into the arts realm and this governance kind of role. And of course, I just wanted to, you know, really reiterate what Bex has said. The Southland District Council has always supported arts and culture through various ways. You've got a very strong community development arm in council who are always at the, you know, grassroots level looking after the community with this, and also from years and years of attending allocations committee meetings, I know how much money has also gone in through grants. And it was really just today an opportunity for us to say, please keep doing that. Please keep supporting the arts. And it's particularly important, and I know it sort of sounds a little bit crass, but money actually really does talk. And if you look at a lot of the arts developments that have gone ahead, sometimes it's years and years and years and years of development before things get off the ground. And so you sometimes have to really consider that really long-term investment, that just, you know, throwing money at a few things here and there, you know, is good for the short term, but you really need to be looking at long-term development and ensuring that there's that sustainability, because what happens often in a lot of arts spheres, as you probably know from being in the community yourself, volunteerism starts to drop off. The key leaders that push projects for years and years get a little bit tired or move on. And so, you know, actually having some money to support coordination roles, development roles, roles in schools, that kind of thing can really, really help sustain the arts that go on in the community. Because if you're just waiting for volunteers to always step up and do it, you don't often have that kind of strategic and, you know, forceful kind of work that goes on. And it was really interesting listening to Brendan McDermott's submission today, because we're on the same page there. He was talking about people needing to look after their health and well-being, their mental health. And, you know, we're on the same page with that. Arts, culture, sport, recreation, it's all together. There's not just arts and there's not just sports. So actually, if you can find ways of integrating active leisure and cultural, artistic activities, then you're going to have a much stronger community. So we're just really here to, you know, get a bit of a flea in your ear to make sure that you don't forget to support arts and culture wherever you can, so that if any projects come up, you go, yes, that's actually something we can do because it's right in front of us. And just to continue doing that. I think that was really about all. And also, so Arts Murihiku has a 10-hour-a-week position that is a paid position, and one of the things that our coordinator Jeannie does is to put out these, I'm going to give you one as I go out. I know I'm probably not supposed to lobby, but anyway, we're having an arts expo here at the Ascot 2 weeks, a week from Saturday, and that's an opportunity for all the arts communities to come together and see what is available in Southland. So that event is coming up. That's just by the by, but yeah, that's all really. Sorry.
No, that's all good. Thank you. Any questions? Look at that. So
great. You agree.
You can even walk around and drop them off. If you just put them at the end of the table there and grab them, that'd be great.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Leanne. Oh, awesome. Leanne submitted 169 on page 617.
Morena all, and apologies for not being available when we were first called this morning.
It's fine.
Look, Your Worship, my name is Leanne Liggett. I'm a public health analyst at Public Health South, and today with me is Joe Conrad, who is a health promoter and also an ex-health protection officer at the Public Health Unit. Now, as you'll be aware, Public Health South is the principal source of expert advice within Southern DHB regarding all public health matters. And it's really important for you to just take that into consideration when you hear us today, and also consider what you've heard from others over the past sort of day and, of course, the session this morning. Because people are very passionate about what they believe in, and we all take things from our own lens and our own angle, and sometimes we need to understand where people come or what their mountain view is from their side of the world. And so it's really great to take all considerations and thoughts into the process when you're listening to us today. But especially in this post-COVID world, public health is really looking to maximise our effectiveness in supporting community wellbeings at all levels. So neglecting those nice-to-have projects that some people have discussed is actually probably not something that you want to just, say, okay, we totally agree with that. Wellbeing, the full wellbeing's coming back into the act is really, really important. And so some of the discussions that you've heard this morning from Brendan and also the previous individuals that were just sitting here, Bex and Angela, it's important for us to think about what can happen over a long duration of time, and how taking things out of the nice to have right here, right now is actually important to our well-being, not only our health, our mental health as well. So please just to take that into consideration as you were listening to everyone over the past day and also this morning. So firstly, I just want to briefly describe the process that we went through in putting together our submission, because I think it's really important for you to understand that we are a public health unit, but although I put this together today, what I did do is get everyone around a table like this in the office, irrespective of what their roles are, whether they're admin, whatever, everyone has something to offer. And then once we put things together, we also looked at what we've identified as our issues. We have an issues register, and we sort of tried to understand where you were coming from, but also where we were coming from, and then drafted something else up. Then what we also then did was actually had a lovely morning tea with two of your community partnership leaders, Kelly and Karen, and they gave us an insight from the community about how things could be done differently, what their perspectives were from the community boards that they were working with and the communities. And then we took that into consideration, and that's what you've got from us today, okay? So what we really are keen to be able to do is try and work more in partnership with the council staff, which we believe we're actually doing. And we believe we've also got a language that we can work together nicely between health and councils, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's 17 of those that the United Nations have put together. And they look at a long-term process. So again, public health is about things that aren't going to happen within your 3-year period, okay? It is that long-term stuff that you put something together, you work for a long time. So these 17 goals, actually, they have objectives over a 15-year period. And that's what public health is all about, trying and looking at the social, cultural, physical and economic environments which people are living in. So that long-term planning. And we acknowledge that life does change. 2 years ago, COVID-19 was just something that we didn't foresee, but it's here with us. We've got to take that into consideration, and we have to try and do things slightly differently. So to assist us with trying to better understand this, what I've asked is for Joe to talk to us about how the Sustainable Development Goals can actually be used in a case study, just so that you can have some real understanding which we've identified one specific area. So I'll pass over to Joe to talk.
Tēnā koutou, ko Joe Grimwood, toka whenua. Your council's been really proactive in developing the smoke-free open spaces policy, and we really do commend your council in going through that process, which encourages the community to refrain from smoking in public outdoor areas, specifically playgrounds, parks and sports grounds, and also at council-led events. However, this has neither been fully implemented or reviewed since being adopted in 2014. The first step in progressing this activity would be to implement clear smoke-free signage, which we would happily provide to the council and support by identifying appropriate locations. New Zealand's goal of being 95% smoke-free by 2025 is still achievable. When we consider the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 5 key linkages which Council can contribute. The first being goal number 3, good health and wellbeing, by ensuring healthy lives and promoting wellbeing for all ages. There are approximately 4,500 smoking-related deaths every year in New Zealand, which equates to 12 preventable deaths every day. Long-term smoking addiction causes premature deaths by an average of 10 to 15 years. We know that policies supporting smoke-free spaces, including the implementation of clear signage, helps to encourage people to stop smoking. Most New Zealanders believe it's important not to smoke in areas that are frequented by children. Changing social norms by continuing to place limits on where people can smoke means smoking becomes denormalised for children and there's less secondhand smoke exposure. The introduction of the smoke-free cars regulation is a great example of the progress being made towards the 2025 aspirational goal. Goal number 11 is sustainable cities and communities, fostering healthy cities through urban planning for cleaner air and safe and more active living. The smoke-free areas have an obvious link to the cleaner air. Goals number 14 and 15 are life below the water and life on the land, which are described as supporting the restoration of fish stocks to improve safe and diversified healthy diets and also promoting health and preventing disease through healthy natural environments. Cigarette butts are actually the most abundant form of plastic waste in the world. A national litter audit in 2019 found more than 2,000 cigarettes for every person is polluting New Zealand's environment. Over 10 billion cigarette butts pollute New Zealand's ecosystem and cause significant harm to our waterways. It's not uncommon for toxic butts to be found inside dead seabirds, sea turtles, fish and dolphins, while the combination of the plastic and the leaching chemicals can be lethal to fresh water and marine species. Locally, we are aware that the Community Board in Rakiura are actively pursuing smoke-free spaces following the sustained pollution from cigarette butts in Half Moon Bay. This could be progressed with smoke-free signage at arrival and departure locations alongside communicating the smoke-free stance and therefore minimising the harm to both the humans and the environment. This would complement the existing smoke-free open spaces policy. Goal number 17 stresses the importance of partnerships to achieve these improved health outcomes. Public Health South has a smoke-free review tool, which we would be delighted to work through with council staff. This assists staff to assess the existing policy and identify potential ways to enhance its effectiveness.
So we just want to acknowledge the role that you play as councillors here, and please be aware that we will continue our relationships with council staff with the other issues that we have identified in our submission. So we will, but we just wanted to choose one activity and one issue to talk to you specifically today. So we will continue to work alongside your staff to actually progress everything else. But, you know, this is what we're trying to do, is trying to minimise the in-depth detail we'd love to share with you and do the upstream work with your council staff and work alongside them so that maybe some of the work or the policies that they bring to you can be as further advanced as possible and already have that input from us. So we're really keen to be able to do this, and we also welcome any questions that you have for us today. But thank you for your time.
Thank you both. Thank you for the submission. So yesterday we heard from a submitter who said to include vaping in some of our signage, so no vaping. Any questions of Leanne or Joe?
Sorry, I seem to remember that when I read your submission, you did make mention of fluoridating water as well. So it's my understanding that that's sort of taken out of council's hands now.
Yes, our continual stance around fluoridation has not changed over the years, and we will support whatever means it is to get it into the water for our communities. So yes, it's in a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but it is still very important for us to actually share what our stance is, as this is a really important public health measure for us.
I agree with you. Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Do you believe New Zealand's on track to be smoke-free by 2025?
Yes, we do. The government have just released a tobacco plan, and the proposals within that are going above and beyond. So we recommend that everyone takes a look at that and puts in your own personal submissions. There's things like creating a smoke-free generation, reducing the filters that are within the cigarettes themselves, reducing the nicotine content, and increasing the stop smoking support, because actually that's one of the key elements of reaching that goal.
Thank you. There don't appear to be any further questions, so thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, team, and back here at 10:45. I know that's only a quarter of an hour, but back at 10:45. Okay, we're back in. Councillor Harper's left the building to represent council at another meeting. All right, so we'll continue with this session of submitters, and the first submitter is 252, Pam York, followed by Fed Farmers.
It's Pam, not Pam.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Morning.
I'm just submitting on behalf of the I hope I Tortoise Community Board, and as you can see from my submission, it's not really on one particular subject, it's on 10. But I'll just give an overview, some of them about part of the items that we put in the long-term plan, just to explain to them a little bit more, and a couple others are just general. First one on my list here is dust suppression. It's just an issue. I know quite a few of their constituents have an issue with dust with the heavy industry on the road, and considering I see on some nice figures we got presented last week that since we have the biggest amount of sealed and unsealed roads, so we do have a lot of rural people, and it is a little bit of an issue. It's just making sure that we can get some sort of resolution out about a cost-effective way for people to deal with this. I mean, they know where they live, they know that gravel roads are gravel roads, but it's just being able to do something that's not exceedingly expensive and doesn't involve a lot of paperwork. Next on Curio Bay, the wastewater plant mentioned at Curio Bay a few years ago, and I personally have submitted on that each year. I haven't come and spoken, but there's a few more householders in the area that would be keen to connect up to that system. It's just revisiting that again and seeing if there's an option to do that sometime in the future. One of our submissions in the LTP from the Community Board was about the Community Board allowing funds for all our pools in the area. At the moment now we run a system for their Wyndham pools where they present us with finances, and we have allocated in the previous few years $10,000 out of our general rate. We've had a different process that's finally now working really well. They come, they speak to us, which some people that were at our meeting last night would have seen. They put through what items of assets that are going to need replaced, and and give them out some money. We want to include those other three areas that other three pools that haven't been working on a system like that. So they would come and submit to us, and they would allocate a certain amount of money to those pools so that everyone's getting the same benefit, regardless of probably the community size they serve. And also then hopefully that would allow for them to have a better sustainability. And those other three pools, to be fair, they do all the fundraising themselves. They probably haven't asked for a lot in the past. We spoke to them when we did our community facilities fund. We actually brought all our applicants in at a workshop, and they all spoke to us, which was very interesting because they were from a big cross section and from all over the area. So it was a good way to get that community space. So all those pools submitted, so we spoke to them about it at that process, and of course they're all keen, but they did realise that they would have to upskill a little bit in probably their reporting systems and what they've done now, because we do make the two that we're doing probably jump through some quite rigorous hoops. They have to have a maintenance plan, they have to have a 10-year plan and supply us with figures, information, where they get the money. I mean, it's not just given that they're going to get it. So there would be a bit of education around that to get them up to speed, I think. Number 4, toilets on the LTP list. We probably seriously think that West Beach still needs an upgrade, and Slope Point does need something. Currently it has nothing. They are still significant tourist hotspots, regardless of tourists here or not, because the local New Zealanders are going there all the time. West Beach is very popular, and my argument to that is that when we look at Waikawa facilities that have been upgraded and the Footrose facilities, not quite as good, but they're still better than probably what's at West Beach for the number of people that go there and use that area. So I would appreciate if we could revisit that. Number 5 on our list, the Windale Transfer Station. We've been asking for some time now through the Waste Department, through rural people wanting to be able to access the transfer station to be able to drop off their recycling. Otherwise, they throw it in the dead hole and burn it. I know we've got a transfer station, but when you go in town or things like that, they're never open when you're going past. So a lot of rural people have replied in the past to your questionnaire that you know, the random questionnaire about the recycling. And I appreciate recycling is probably not the in word at the moment, but if we could have got a container in the fence, then that gives the rural people the ability to do their bit and drop it off, rather than the, you know, static. And I appreciate that transfer stations can't be open 24 hours a day, but, you know, that ability, or, you know, just to be able to drop things off would be appreciated if we could get that revisited. And that is due to community members, you know, wanting to be able to use that. Bridges and roading in the LTP, I understand and appreciate the pricing around that, but it is a significant part of a rural area's lifeline, if you say. So continuing to maintain their investment in infrastructure is important. I wouldn't sit here and tell you how to go about it, but we appreciate you putting emphasis on that, and we've seen in that area when those things can't work or don't work, the disadvantage that it causes. And as I said before, we do have a lot of bridges and we do have a lot of those roads that are up for discussion. One of the other things we have in our LTP is the walkway between Wyndham and Endale. Now, that's been floated for quite some time, and it did actually come from a couple of groups and from kids at the school, because there's a lot of interaction between people trooping between Wyndham and there, with the only college in our area in Wyndham. So I think it is time to revisit looking at that. We did do some costings ages ago, which would need revisit. It was reasonably expensive, but we just want to sort of start and try and get a project scope around that, see pricing, see what's available. Our issue, of course, is their bridge. That is a significant part of the cost of that. But look, the amount of people, I don't know, you know, like people are just walking or biking, or they even bike to work, to Fonterra, those sorts of things on that road. Very busy road, very, very industrial busy road, tractors, trucks, everything else. We believe it's probably time. If we leave it too long, it's only going to get more expensive. So, you know, and we appreciate it's not going to happen overnight. Number 8, community hall upgrade. We've put in for the kitchen, but on the bigger part to that is probably been for, how many years? I don't know, 6, 10 years. It's been revisited and visited about the library. The library was moved from an earthquake building, which is a lovely building for it to be in, over to supposedly a temporary building across the road. That temporary's been there probably 6, 7 years. I don't know how long temporary is, but I mean, we had looked at a hub option, well, asked about a hub option with museum, library, hall some time ago, and that got sort of scuttled. So I think it's time we looked at the library issue. I look at the Te Anau Library and I look at the Winton Library getting spending on it, and I feel like we're the poor relation. So we have a hall, we have a facility that may be too big, maybe not. Halls are always up for discussion, but I do think there needs to be emphasis on the temporary component of a library. You know, it gets use. I don't see the older people in our community or the younger people, I don't see them going away. I mean, they're how they're configured and what they deliver may change, but I think the way the world's going, I don't see small communities disappearing. So I think we need something, but how we work that, and I need it revisited. Number 9, Fort Rose Foreshore Review, we put in our LTP. There's been issues there previous years with the flooding. we have boat ramps, and we have playgrounds, and we have freedom camping area, and we have toilets. We have a whole issue that may or may not work itself out, but the whole area probably with the projected rise in sea levels, climate change and those sorts of things, it's probably more just looking forward, trying to get some work done on what may happen there, get the community on board and see perhaps if the way things are sitting there at the moment are the right way for the future. Because if we have to spend money on things in that area, is that the right place to be spending it, or does it have to move? I don't know what the answer is, but I think we need to start doing the work around that. Don't really want it to turn into a Colic Bay for sure debate. And also since number 10, the Curio Bay overview, since the council's acquired that other section, trying to get an overview of perhaps with the community on what's required, where we go, that sort of thing, working with the groups in that area. Just a lot of that probably comes out of the way locals see it compared to now with the representation review, having community board members over a bigger area, having a different perhaps opinion or look at it compared to what some others would look at it. So it's been a very interesting journey so far with change in community board structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Pam? Councillor Byers and Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Pam. Dust suppression, we've heard a bit about that recently, and you're open to ideas around low-cost ways of managing that issue. Would you consider lower speed limits for the area?
I think gravel roads entice their own lower speed limits anyway. So I don't.
Pardon?
Gravel roads tend to entice their own lower speed limits. You don't probably really see people going at 100 k's on a gravel road. I think, I don't know how you do that, no. Unless you're going to make a whole road lower. You can still get dusting 40 k's if you've got the conditions right. If it's been dry for a long time, they maintain the roads, they grade them, the dust is just there.
There might be less dust at 40 k's.
Yeah, but the dust that collects and comes in your house, it's regardless, it's just a continual thing. I think the only way to do it is like, if you're not putting water on the road, putting some other form of sealant. You could always seal in front of everyone's house.
Councillor Owen.
Kia ora, Pam. I just wanted to ask, the slope point toilet, is that a want, a nice to have, or is it a case where there's defecation issues and stuff at that point that need addressing?
Oh, I would think there's defecation issues because there is nothing there, and there is. I know you have toilet lengths, distances between them, but probably people underestimate the distance between places and don't think about that. I think for the protection of the area, that would be a better option.
Councillor Kramer.
Thank you. Good presentation, Pam. The dust suppression, and you indicated maybe some other form of dust suppression should be considered. So if you put auto seal on there in front of the residents' homes, would you think that there would be a sharing of the cost so that the household also makes a financial contribution to that?
Oh, yes, I do think so.
So 50-50?
Yeah, yeah.
Councillor Byers.
Oh, sorry, cancel that. Thanks.
Oh, cancel it. Thank you. Don't appear to be any further questions. Thank you for your submission, Pam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next submitters, Federated Farmers, submitters 229 on page 879, and we have Jeffrey and David. Thanks, gentlemen, just in your own time.
Hi, good morning to you all. I'm Jeffrey Young,
and I have alongside me here my colleague James Riders, who's probably known to a number of you here. He's submitted to a number of LTD for the district and regional council over quite a number of years. Excuse me. Southland Federated Farmers welcomes the opportunity to submit to Southland District Council on its long-term plan consultation document. You'll probably all have read it, but I'll just touch on this. Federated Farmers has been a long-standing committed to Southland District Council annual plans and long-term plans. Our position over the years has been for Southland District Council to keep its spending and rates increases in check and maintain a rating system that results in a rates allocation that reflects the use and benefit derived from council activities. So you'll all be aware that we're living in uncertain times with the COVID pandemic. It's impacted every sector within New Zealand and the rest of the globe, particularly in terms of transportation around the globe and those lines of transport for goods and services. The one or two things that I do want to touch on, but highlighting it, is the fact that we don't believe that it's sustainable to have an in excess of 10% rate increases over the next couple of years. We represent all farmers, sheep and beef farmers, having a difficult time the last 2 years. Dairying has gone exceptionally well, but tourism is also badly hit by the pandemic. So there's certainly a lot of uncertainty and lack of funds for private businesses out there. So that's why we are mindful that those rate increases are difficult to swallow for everyone, I think, in the community. The one highlight that does stick out to me is the proposal to spend about $10.5 million for a new Invercargill office there over the next several years, and also the Winton office upgrade there. I think you'll all be aware that some of the function of local government could be lost over the next 2 or 3 years to central government, and I'm talking specifically about Three Waters, and just how that is funded will remain to be seen. But I believe that we do need to be very mindful about adding costly infrastructure to house the council when it may not be needed. Whether you're going to get an increase in staff or not remains to be seen. And of course, the biodiversity regulations that are coming out, I think will probably add staffing issues to you people. So that's another concern for federated farmers. We have had, or I have had, meetings with one of your people concerning that, and we will be monitoring that quite closely, because it is another major concern, although it's a peripheral area to what we're looking at here today. Probably that's about it in terms of a bit of an overview for me. There's some of those areas that I am really concerned about, but I believe that we do need to stick to our knitting, and it's all about roads and bridges, basically. That's where the wealth of Southland is generated from, and so we want to see that roads and bridges in particular are the things that are kept up to a very good standard. And I must, rather than be negative, I must compliment you that at least on our road up into Cattle Flat, you did a very good job there, including patching up the road where it fell into the river. So I do commend you on that. But there are many roads and a number of bridges that have been fallen into disrepair or closed down completely. So I do urge you to stick to that, and do that within within budget and not have to increase rates to the extent that is proposed. So look, I think with that, I'll leave it up to my colleague David, and he's got some more detailed points there, but I did want to make some of those comments on a general overview.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, look, I just want to take you back to our submission and just go through some points on how you get roads and bridges fixed, but without huge rate increases. So I guess what we're saying is, we know that you're facing challenges and much of your core infrastructure is ageing and needs considerable work just to maintain existing levels of service. We support your option on bridges and roading, but we don't support the 10% rate increases for the next 2 years. We believe you need to smooth your rate increases over a decade and also look at a large proportion of your operating and capital spending. Some of it's on core infrastructure and things, absolutely, your three waters, your sewage and your stormwater, but there's also large increases in corporate services and environmental services and some big years in capital spending in the community resources activity. So we're saying to you, you need to reprioritise spending and focus on the things that give you real value. A lot of these things are nice to haves, but in the current environment, everybody's got to cut the cloth, and so does the council. So, so to get to the bottom, we would like you to review all aspects of your operating spending and ensure it's appropriate, review your capital projects, and use more debt to fund some of the transport capital spending. They're helping to smooth it and making it more intergenerational. We believe the rate increases of more than 10% will be hard for ratepayers to swallow at this time. And also with the challenges coming at us around what Environment Southland's looking at doing. And indeed, many farmers don't know how they're going to farm in the future. There's some huge challenges coming at us. And, as our economist said to us, we were possibly still in a recession in New Zealand too. There's a lot of borrowing going on. So we go to some of these, although your three waters activities operating expenditure will increase by more than the overall increase, transport, mostly roading and bridges, will have a much smaller increase. So it's a little curious when you look at the booklet you put out, because the primary concern was roading and bridges. Value for money, we've outlined in our submission on page 5 a number of projects in there that, like for instance, I don't understand how some of the toilets, you've got a lot of toilets in there, I'm not sure they all need done at this time. I have talked to people about the Mosman one and they seem to think it's okay, and I don't know, but I don't understand the difference between a toilet at Balfour being 200k and the one at Mosman being 500k. Perhaps it's got pipe music, I don't know, but it just seems you need to look at this stuff. As Jeff said, the Winton office refurbishment at 1.1 million, your open spaces strategy, I know that's parks and reserves, but again, 2.5 million, a multi-use track at over $1 million, the Te Anau runway, 1.3 million, and even the wharf renewal, I'm not sure if it's the open one, but there's 2 million there. So we're drawing these projects to the Southland District Council's attention. It's not saying that we don't consider them worthwhile. However, we are questioning whether all of them need to be done immediately at this time when rates are proposed to increase by more than 10% over the next 2 years. We also want SDC to ensure the most cost-efficient options are taken for these projects, including competitive tendering. There's a whole lot of toilets coming up. Surely there's a very good tendering process that might bring some of those costs down. And we want to ensure the lessons of the past, such as the costly court case associated with around the Malcolm cycle trail, are not forgotten. You know, there was a lot of money poured into things like that. So we need to go back to core infrastructure. We need to do it well. And look through those projects that I mentioned earlier to the must-dos in this current climate. So we talk about debt and we talk about how other councils have more debt, so that looks like you can borrow a little to help spread the costs of roads and bridges. Roads are a core infrastructure which in many cases nearing the end of their economic lives, and with some in danger of reverting to gravel, and which we don't support. Good roads are crucial for the economic and social connectivity and well-being. We believe more of transport's activity capital spending should be funded from increased debt as opposed to the activity operating surplus, which is vulnerable to economic shocks or excessive spending on non-core activities. So it's certainty around the roading project, getting on top of it and it happening. Using more debt and less rates would take the pressure over rates increases. Yeah, and that's probably it, apart from just the sort of a sum up. So roads and bridges, you know, I've been involved with Southland District Council for a long time. I remember that this is not a new issue. There was a wave of us coming back when Dave Adamson was. I was part of went to some road shows. They were going to have a task force to deal with it, and we heard nothing more of it. So, you know, Federated Farmers has always been and keen to work with council on how this stuff happens and help and offer feedback. But, you know, in my area, I've got 4 bridges that are closed. One of them's the Waianawa Bridge to heavy traffic. And I believe it was a member of the public that even alerted you. So, you know, seemingly you've really dropped the ball on the bridge issue. And the use, so what we're saying is you can use intergenerational loans to help flatten the rates and get on top of it. There's a lot of expenditure in this that seems non-core, so that needs to be reprioritised. And in these uncertain times, you know, we've got some large costs coming at farming. We've got COVID that we're still not through. Everybody's having to cut their cloth, and so should the council. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the submitters, David and Jeffrey? Councillor Rodenclaw.
Thank you very much for your presentation this morning. I live in a rural community and I'm a sheep and beef farmer.
Right.
And I hear your concerns. I've heard them myself. And we had someone present this morning who is a venison farmer, was talking about a 50% reduction in their income. I like the cut the cloth comment, and we all had to do that ourselves and our businesses. And I just thank you for your presentation this morning.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, thank you. So, Jeff, you mentioned the expense on biodiversity coming up. That is something I believe that's been imposed by central government. How do you, what would your thoughts be around who should be paying for what?
Look, Councillor Douglas, I realise it's imposed by central government. I suppose that the big issue is around property rights and just how it's going to affect individual farmers. And that's my real concern. I believe it will be up to local government New Zealand to try and push back, because I'm not against outstanding landscapes and SNAs being identified and protected. But I am very concerned about the erosion of property rights and being forced into having to give up some of that land to ostensibly the greater good of the public. So in terms of funding it, yes, you do have to fund it, but it's a question of how much staff it's going to take to do that, and just whether we are going to see an erosion of property rights with it.
Councillor Kramer, Councillor Ford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. It's not a question, but more of a comment and some reassurance on some of the comments that you made this morning. And one is the lessons that we have learned with regards to around the mountain cycle trail. And as I say, we have learned some lessons there, and we have made some internal changes to ensure that that doesn't get repeated. So our procurement policies have changed. We do have a very robust process for our tendering processes now when we look at our capital projects. So it's more of a reassurance to you that we have improved our systems and our processes, and we certainly look at those capital projects and with a lot more vigour. All right.
Councillor Ford.
Yep. Thank you. And I was just curious if you'd comment on the fact that the farming industry as such, which we certainly appreciate in the region, is a big demand on our roads. And that's where we're probably going to want to charge you because of the stock trucks and milk trucks and all those things. So it's difficult to argue that you don't get a bigger share of the cost. Can you perhaps comment on that?
Well, I suppose for me, road user charges do account for quite a bit of the cost for rural transport. Log trucks in particular on some roads are a significant issue, but certainly milk tankers regularly on other roads are part of the issue, and as you say, stock trucks. But look, the agricultural industry in Southland benefits absolutely everyone in the community, so we do need to be mindful of that, and I believe that everyone needs to play their part.
Yeah, I think also, if I can add, like in the funding policy, the rural community, the sheep and dairy farmers pay by far the lion's share of running costs anyway. One of the issues that you could follow up on, though, that seemingly is a problem, is that a large amount of the road users that are collected are not returned to this province. And that's a huge issue for us because we've got such a large roading network, and that would be a big help. That would be a big help. And the government needs to understand that productive provinces like us are what has got this country through COVID. So they need to help more with the maintenance of the province and return those road user charges back to where they should belong.
I believe there's about 3,500 kilometres of roads in Southland.
Five.
Five. Sorry,
Five.
I thought it was 3.5 from the previous figure told me. But what proportion of that, in terms of other regions in New Zealand, is that disproportionately high for Southland?
We're the second highest to Auckland.
Right.
Yep, jolly good, thank you. Well, I would hope that you'd be presenting to government agencies on that very topic, that we're not getting our fair share, because it's certainly something that the council does, and all your help would be appreciated.
We'd certainly be prepared to do that.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Byers.
Thank you for a good submission. We had an idea yesterday that was presented around the paper roads and the amount of land that was tied up in paper roads. And this idea was to see if there was an appetite to sell them to the adjoining landowners. Is that something that you would support?
I'm sure most farmers would be very grateful to do that. I think it's a great idea, because in the past it's been very difficult, I believe, to take over a paper road privately. In fact, even one of the previous mayors did consider, and I remember speaking to her about it, that some of the lesser used back roads in Southland could even be privatised. Whether that would come to pass, I don't know, but certainly those paper roads, there's a lot of merit in selling them off, and I'm sure that farmers would pick that up.
Thank you. Okay, there don't appear to be any further questions, so thank you for your submission, both verbal and written. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next submitter is 148, Mr. Alistair Faulkner. I understand he's coming in via Zoom. Okay, Alistair, you are.
Sorry, Gary, can't hear you.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3.
Yep, got you now.
Okay.
Yeah, Your Worship, the Mayor, councillors, and especially Bruce Ford, our local councillor on Stewart Island. Thank you very much for the chance to speak, and the council staff for actually organising the Zoom meeting. First thing I'd like to talk about is roads. The increased rate for the roads and things like that. Yes, it needs to happen. The roads over here are in a shocking state. We've had very little mowing of roadside verges and things this year. So I'm actually supporting you on the rate increase on roading. Bridges, not so much. We have a couple of 3 big, large, heavy vehicles on the island. I've yet to see one obey the speed limits over our bridges, which I'm sure is helping to destroy them. Perhaps a limit on weight on heavy vehicles on the island would be something worth looking at. The other thing is the number of cars. There's over 700 cars on the island. We have 408 people. Knock off those that don't drive, kids, etc., etc., etc. Far too many vehicles on the road, basically driven by tourists who sometimes don't expect the things that we see on the roads, like people walking down the middle of the road, push bikes on the road, especially the electric bikes and the tutti-frutti scooters that Stewart Island Experience hires out. These all lead to the destruction of bridges and the roads on the island. They do need to be done up, so I support on that. The rate increase of 10.15%, my rates for the last year were $1,987 and a few odd cents. The proposed rate is $2,404, which is really, really quite high, like over 21%. Some of the other, I'd like to thank the council especially for putting on the ability to have a look at the rates at your own address or anybody else's address. A lot of them are well over the 18% average. People have approached me because they can't use their computers and things like that to look at the rate increases, the proposed rate increases. Some of them, higher than mine, some of them slightly lower than mine. But it is one heck of an increase, really, when you think about it. I'm on a pension. With the increase that we have just received, I get about an extra $13 per week. With the increase in the rates as proposed, I'll be, that's gone, totally gone. The increase in rates of $417, $13 a week times 52, $676. So basically, pensioners, and there's quite a few of us on the island, are not going to receive an increase because of the high rates. The CISA rate, or CISA, depending on which school you went to, that everybody has to pay on the island in various methods. Some only $100 if they don't actually have the power on, but the power is available. Those of us that do use the electricity on the island, those rates are, they've been added onto the rates of $200. Now, I've spoken to the community board about this, and they basically said to me, put in a submission. I'll put in a submission. So, although I have to accept that the general increase of 10.15% thereabouts, I'm quite happy with that extra $200 a year from CISA. It's just going to make it impossible, even with the discount received through applying for the $655 from the government. And that's pretty basically all I'd like to talk about this morning. I'd like to thank you guys and girls very much for listening, and the council staff for setting up this meeting.
Thank you. We'll just see if there's any questions. Councillor Duffy.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I picked you up, Alistair. So you referred to the rates rebate from the government. Is that right?
Yes, I was referring to that. With it, I haven't taken that into the equation with the figures that I quoted, but without that, there's no way in hell that I'd ever be able to afford that 21% increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. There don't appear to be any further questions. So you gave me a bit of a fright when you come up on the screen there. I've only known you by your nickname.
Yeah. Tippy will do anytime. Thanks, Gary.
Okay, thanks for your submission.
You know his nickname? Tipwreck.
So we've still got Alistair online. Just about called your nickname then.
You're allowed to
We're just
tell
going to
me.
wait there. He's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next submitter is number 247, Conrad.
Morena, kia ora.
Morena.
My name's Conrad Waipi. I've been a resident in the ICAPS community now for 22 years, and I'm in the fire service as well. And just lately we spend a lot of time with elderly folk, and our main concerns and their main concerns is the rates increase. They're having trouble with the rates as it is, trying to pay those rates as it is. And then with the increase, I'm not a very good speaker, but with the rate increases, some of them actually talking about going to retirement homes.
Sorry, talking about?
The elderly folk.
Yeah, they're talking about what, sorry?
Oh, moving to selling up and going to retirement homes. And it's not really what it should be about. It should be about them. They worked hard and they earned their homes. So, and then last night we had a fire brigade meeting last night in Te Reo. And then things sort of pop up with concerns about retirement homes. And then, like, at night times, there might be about 50 to 70 people in a retirement home, but there might only be 3 staff on. So if the siren goes off and it's at a retirement home, there's no way that 3 people are going to get 50 people out of a retirement home. And if we get tipped out to it, I don't want to be the one to put in a K41. And that's how many casualties. And I don't think anybody else wants to either. So, yeah, so pretty much my concern is like the rates are too high for these people to pay.
Yep.
So is there a way we can bring them back down for elderly people? That's pretty much it.
Thank you for speaking on behalf of your community, Conrad. Any questions, Councillor Owen?
Thank you for coming to speak today. So we've recently looked at our rates policy for remission and postponement, and some of the options in there include postponement of rates. And I'm wondering if there's any discussion or any views amongst people that you've been talking to around what ways in which council could potentially postpone, like for example, in some other parts of the country, they'd be looking at postponing to the point where it's when that person does eventually sell up and go into a retirement village, that then the difference is paid back then or something like that. Do you have, are any conversations talking with these people about?
Yeah, well, a lot of them, they don't want to sell up.
Yeah.
You know, that's their family home. And they don't want to go to a retirement home. You know, that's their place.
Stay in the community.
Yeah. Because I know offhand, there was an elderly lady, she went to town, like she lived in Ojai pretty much all her life, went into town, knew nobody.
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after that she passed away. Because all her friends were out there. She knew no one in town. You go on the street, that neighbour doesn't talk to that neighbour, that doesn't talk to that neighbour. And they go nowhere. It's a totally different lifestyle. And they can't handle it. Yeah, so what's it going to bring? Like, if the rates keep going up, what's going to happen in 10 years' time? What's going to happen after that? Is it going to keep going up that high that they have no choice but to go to a retirement home? You know, like these people, they built this country. And it's them we should be respecting.
I just have one more question, and is it the people that you've been talking to, are they all people who own their own home, or are some of them in rentals as well?
No, they own their own homes. Yeah. And they don't want to go anywhere. Like even when they get to the stage where you know, they need help. That's what we do. We help them. That's what we're about. And little communities will put more into helping someone than anywhere else. Yeah. So that's pretty much my concern. It's like, we need to look after them.
It's a genuine concern. Councillor Duffy.
Kia ora, Conrad. So you're saying you help them. Do you help them just as an individual, or are you part of a group, organised group that work?
No, well, I actually personally know a lot of them. Like, I've only been in nightcaps 22 years, but I personally know a lot of these people. And when things start to get too tight for them, we'll take them firewood. We'll go and get their coal for them. If they're having trouble trying to get to their rates, because I own my own business, and if they're having trouble financially trying to pay for things, I help them. That's what we do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Conrad. There don't appear to be any further questions. Thank you for your very heartfelt. So do we have anyone from Murihiku Kai Collective? Oh, cool. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't see you there. Sorry, David, I didn't see you there. Morning. So this submitter is 232 on page 894.
Yes, kia ora koutou. I'm Dave Kennedy. I'm co-chair of the Southern Farmers Market, and I have with me Robin Guyton and Nick Kiddy, who are here also representing the South Coast Environment Society. And we're here representing the Murihiku Kai Collective. So the Kai Collective is made up of a number of community groups who formed around the common vision of empowering Southland communities with the knowledge, skills and capability to source, grow, produce good food. The Kai Collective are a group of Southland organisations and businesses who want to build Southland's food system prosperity and resilience from seed to bowl. So the organisations involved with their group, Sport Southland, Well South, Public Health Network, South Coast Environmental Society, Southern Institute of Technology, Farmers Market, Koha Kai, Spirit Army, WasteNet South and Riverton Food Co-op, Longwood Loop, South Alive, as well as representatives from Invercargill City Council. So sort of a context for why we're here. We feel there's a
Sorry,
number.
I might have to stop you. I've just realised that I'm the chair of Koha Kai, so I'll have to step away from the table. Yeah.
Please continue.
Thanks for that. I'm not sure what the conflict of interest would be with this presentation, but that's fine. We've got some real concerns about food resilience. So some general challenges, if you look at the context that we're sort of looking at the moment, is there's a general move towards monoculture industrialised farming. There used to be 24,500 growers in 1986. There's less than 900 now. There's a focus on exports rather than the domestic supply. Farms are a lot bigger. There are 45,000 fewer farms in New Zealand than in 1981. Regional food resilience is gone with the supermarket duopoly and national distribution systems. For instance, if the roads close between Christchurch and Invercargill, within 3 days we're running out of food and we don't have any milk supply. We're losing diversity of food. We increasingly import more of our food. Almost 12% of our food is imported now, over $40 million a year of frozen fruit and vegetables that we should be able to grow locally. In Southland, 80% of our food used to be grown here to supply the domestic market. Now it's less than 10%. Food poverty and related obesity, almost 1 in 3 adults is now obese. During the lockdown, our farmers market was not considered an essential service. One of our growers had excess fruit and vegetables that they couldn't sell, so we distributed amongst people who were struggling financially. I delivered personally to 53 families in Invercargill. They were extremely grateful to have this food, and they said that they wouldn't be able to afford it on their incomes, food of that quality. And it was just local fresh fruit and vegetables. So Koha Kai are providing school lunches for many children suffering from food poverty. Few families now have home gardens. There are limited cooking skills for raw fresh food. Those skills are being lost. And we've also got some challenges relating to climate change with changing weather patterns, etc. So there are a lot of good things happening. We've got seed saving, community school initiatives, the farmers market's been operating for a few years now and so forth. And we also acknowledge this council's support for a lot of these initiatives. So we're looking at a need for some kind of action plan to support food resilience. And we've got 5 points listed in our submission. Food equity, supporting communities' right to access nourishing food and drink. Food sovereignty, supporting sustainable and mana-enhancing community participation in local food systems. Food culture and traditions, supporting local food systems to reflect who we are as Aotearoa New Zealand. Food for health and well-being, supporting communities to take control of their food and drink intake and more options to support their health and well-being. And food resilience, supporting all levels of the food system to be resilient. So we've got some ideas for short-term, medium-term and long-term goals. I think if you've got that submission, you'll be able to see them there. What we're looking at is a partnership with the Southland District Council to support some collaborative initiatives, and we're not looking at a big expenditure, we're just looking at a collaborative kind of situation where we can put our heads together and look at ways that we can sustainably do some useful things. So you'll see there in table 2, short-term goals, Southland District Council represented to be part of the Manahuku Kai Collective. Co-design a strategic food policy with the Kai Collective. So if you look at, I'm not sure if it was part of the thing we submitted, but there's a really useful good food roadmap which provides some really excellent ideas on what a strategy could look like. A larger focus on publicly available edible plantings, communications to wrap around this for public awareness and harvesting. So medium term, centralised council-led composting systems appropriate to Southland communities. posting garden and food resilience information on their website, supporting the Longwood Loop distribution system and other like systems, scoping the role and description for a paid regional food resilience coordinator. Just a side point here too, where our main focus is on resilience and health of local people, but we do see some economic benefits of food diversity and celebrating what we can grow well in Southland. We see that's got economic potential, but that's not our brief. Long-term paid food resilience coordinator, Kai Collective and Southland District Council to co-design role description and the provision of outdoor teaching spaces for edible gardens. So when I was doing deliveries to a lot of these struggling families, very few of them had gardens. So, you know, there's a huge need there for providing education. There are lots of examples of other councils who are supporting similar food goals, and there's some examples given there. Dunedin City Council's got the Good Food Dunedin Charter. Christchurch City Council's got Edible Christchurch Food Resilience Policy and Action Plan, and Auckland's got a Climate Plan Food Priority. We do see this as something that's meets the full well-beings in most of its areas. Food resilience is important for the well-being of the people. It's got economic, environmental, positive outcomes from good policy as well. So open to questions.
Yep. So I think it's worth noting that we all appreciate that times are difficult financially, and what we're trying to do with the Murihiku Kai Collective is more or less empower people to undertake actions that will support their well-being that don't actually necessarily require any kind of financial investment, and that we feel that council can do quite a lot to support those aims without having to make large investments. And, you know, as noted before, some of the activities that are already going on do enjoy funding from council for different activities. One of the things I think is a real key opportunity is council-owned land, and especially parks and reserves. And I noted reading the Open Spaces strategy, which was published in 2004, I can't quite remember when that date's from, that there was a point in there about supporting the provision of sports fields, but noting that demographics relating to engagement and things like sport were changing. And I know that a large amount of money is spent on mowing grass, which continues to grow back and therefore requires further mowing. And that for very little investment, personally, I think council could look at some strategic changes to the way that public land is managed so that more community food production could be undertaken and maintenance costs could at the same time be reduced. And it's that kind of strategic thinking that I think is going to be really, really valuable going forward to support communities, especially hearing from Conrad just before about elderly people who are struggling with rates rises, that we need to look at how our public infrastructure can be used to better support those people. I expect that many of those elderly folk probably aren't regular sports players, and it might be that converting part of a local sports field to a food forest or a community garden or at least a low maintenance orchard could be a way of supporting that community with very little investment. Noted in the submission about community composting projects, that's something that the Environment Centre, Riverton Environment Centre started working with WasteNet on, but we're not quite sure where that's at the moment, but I think that's another really key opportunity. Currently, I feel that just from personal experience at the Riverton transfer station, that organic material that is taken there is being used very poorly and is turning out a product that is inferior and that is not sought after by anybody, which I suspect is probably going to end up actually having to go to landfill, despite it being diverted from landfill in the first place. But if a more cohesive, coordinated approach was taken towards small community composting programs throughout the region, we could be saving costs while generating an asset that could be of great use in terms of food production to support food resilience in the community. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to add. Thanks.
Could I just add that as Southern Farmers Market, we're struggling to have growers. At the moment, we've lost a number of growers, and there aren't many small growers looking. Well, there's a great demand for organic food, for instance, and there's just not many people growing that sort of thing. One of the issues is distribution systems. So for people who are growing a small quantity of food, to get them into, say, Invercargill, where market is, just costs too much for them as a single grower. So the Longwood Loop idea is a really good concept, and we've talked about how there are often transport systems like Kohakai delivering lunches around different rural communities. They could double up with a van that could provide a way of taking food back into Invercargill or other smaller communities. So looking at distribution models is probably a key element as well.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. I'll open it up for any questions. There being none, I know that in one community in Fiordland, they've utilised council land and they've got a community garden going now, and it's working exceptionally well. So they're sharing that food within the community, so it can work. So maybe we just need to ramp that up a little bit throughout the district itself. And as you say, council does have land that could be used for that, whether it's a reserve or football ground, or yeah, there are options there. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay. Helen McLeish. Is Helen here? Oh, yes. Sorry. Morning, Helen. Morning.
Morning.
Hello. So we've just got these photographs to have a look at too. Yeah.
I've got photos of 3 different.
Oh, you're
bridges.
okay? Keep talking. Yeah.
Okay.
You.
Mayor and councillors, I'm Helen McLeish from Drummond. We're grain farming and sheep farming. We've been there since 1879, so we're actually, my son's just started working with us, and that's the 5th generation to be working on the farm. So for us, these wee bridges are actually really important. They might not have a lot of use like the main bridges, which we know obviously they get more funding, but they're really important to us for varying reasons. Because our farm's on 3 blocks, it doesn't all connect. My mother-in-law got a knock on the door one day from somebody from the council saying the bridge was to be closed the next day, and as my husband and I are actually the landowners, we didn't even get notified. So we found that quite disconcerting, actually. And my mother-in-law was 78 at the time, so quite disappointing, actually. And my husband and my father-in-law were actually working on the other block, and she said, well, they can get home tonight. What about tomorrow? I have, my son and I went on a wee Kentucky tour around the block the other day to measure the distance to go the other way. It's 6.3 Ks, which is twice as far if we can go over the bridge. If we go the other way around the other block, it's actually 9 Ks, and this isn't very helpful to be able to keep in contact with neighbours, and when you're doing things on farms with other neighbours, it's actually quite disturbing, actually. We've been having to use the main road for carting machinery and livestock. Because we do grain, like for instance this year we took off 500 bales off a couple of paddocks. We would have normally, I have brothers down at Wainwit and they bring up machinery like balers and things, and then they cart bales back. So we were carting 500 bales down the main road and along the block road, which with double trailers and tractors, actually you can't pass. And we would have normally gone through the back roads, over the bridge through Sparbush to Waianawa, which is much safer for the public plus the guys on the tractors. We have, in about 6 weeks' time, we've got 1,300 sheep to get shifted from one block back to the yards, and we actually need to be able to use the bridge. It is very frustrating to be able to shift stock around the farm, because you've got to have a motorbike on one side of the bridge and then another motorbike on the other side of the bridge, and just even to get the sheep across the bridge when you've got concrete blocks on them, it's actually really, you don't want me to tell you what we think about it, actually. We would like to see the bridges fixed. We realise that there's only so much money to go around, but we actually would like to question why, when we found out that the bridge was to be closed, I actually had quite a chat to the road manager at the time, and he couldn't even tell me what maintenance plan, he couldn't tell me how old the bridge was, he couldn't tell me anything about our bridge at all. And actually I found that quite disconcerting, actually. We figure when the bridge was actually, for quite some time, had a weight restriction, I would think that should give some signs that actually maybe things need to start to happen, and not wait till we're told the day that it's actually going to be closed the next day to say we can't use it, and then to be told that we might be able to use it for 5 to 10 years. I mean, we're actually a business, and if we actually ran our business like this, it's actually disgusting, actually. And I got my rates bill yesterday, and just for the farm area alone, I'm paying $12,000 of rates, and we still can't use our bridge. The other part of the photos that you have is there's a culvert. So if I can explain, the bridge is down McLeish Road. It's about 3/4 the way down, and then there's 2 different neighbours own the paddocks on either side, so we don't actually connect round to the other piece over here. This was a paper road this way, and this bit was a paper road this way about 70 years ago. And my father-in-law paid to put the culvert in on this bit so that they could get from this bit to this bit. Does that all make sense?
Yep.
So he's really annoyed that he paid for this culvert, which he can't find the receipts for because it's 70 years ago, that now he can't use the bridge or the culvert because he has to go round the other way. So that's McLeish Road and the culvert. Thompson's crossing the bridge. My nephew, well, my sister lives there. We've got 3 generations over there as well, and their bridge has been closed as well. Now, this is a health and safety issue. My nephew's 6-month-old daughter had breathing issues last year in August, and they called 111 for the ambulance, and the ambulance was told that the road was closed, the bridge was not usable, and still with the GPS, the ambulance tried to go up the road, and then it had to go round the block, and there's only 2 ways to get there, up Gap Road or back to Lockhill Engineering, which are quite decent-sized blocks. So it's precious time that was lost because our wee small bridges were just ignored because we don't have enough traffic going over them, but they're actually important to us as a community and to a rural network. So it was precious minutes that were lost that she did survive, but I mean, when you're 6 months old and you're having breathing trouble, it actually is really important. It could be elderly people. In our block itself, my father-in-law's 88, my mother-in-law's 80, the neighbours on both sides of them are in their 80s, and we can't get round in good time because we have to go the long way round. The third bridge is the Waianawa Bridge. I grew up in Waianawa. I've got my mother there who's 88 as well. I've got 2 brothers down there. My son travels over this bridge every day to work, and we've got major questions about the state of this bridge. And I understand, like David Rose said earlier, that the district council didn't know the state of the bridge. It was actually somebody from the railways who were inspecting the railways and saw a vehicle going over and nearly had a fit. So my questions are we realise it's a main distribution road, the Wainua Bridge. A lot of people go from Aotearoa, Isle of Bank, Drummond, Hedenbush, some from Ojai, Nightcaps, and even as far as Mosburn, I know, travel that way regularly over that bridge. My question is, how often is this bridge inspected? And we understand that it's on the list to be replaced in the 10-year possibilities, but what happens if this bridge doesn't last 10 years? What plans have you got in place to fix this if this bridge isn't safe? I hope we're not going to wait till there's an accident and somebody's killed, because actually it is used a lot. So if it needs replaced in 5 years, can we do it? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Helen? Thank you for your submission. So we can keep those photographs? Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher Halder. Is Christopher? Alan Bryce. Alan Bryce has submitted number 210 on page 749. Thank you, Alan.
What I have is hardly a key issue, but it's nuts and bolts, and I appreciate the opportunity to raise it here. My request is for some dressing of the short gravelled northeast, no exit extension of Palmerston Street in Riverton, and some sort of attention to drainage to avoid ponding of rainwater. There's a substantial drainage ditch on the north side of the road, but little drainage from the south side where most residents are living. And potential development in the area is indicated by recent land sales, with at least one new house in planning. The area presently has a neglected atmosphere which has encouraged gypsy camp image settlement rather than ensure an area of what's known as quiet enjoyment by long-term residents. Fine weather creates dust problems. Poor weather results in drainage problems. I seek some sort of appropriate road dressing and drainage solutions for a small but neglected area. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We heard from Leah and Doreen yesterday as well.
I'm sorry?
We heard from Leah and Doreen in regards to this matter.
Already submitted?
Yep.
Okay.
Any questions? There probably aren't any questions because those two people answered everything. So,
right. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have no Christopher Halder and no Paula and Liz. Did we think they were coming, those two? I think we'll have to. If they're not coming, we'll close the meeting. But if there's an opportunity for them to come, okay. Right. Yep. Okay. All right. They knew what time we were going to finish, but right. What have we got to do now?
Is that last report of the submission and postponement of rate policy submissions? And you've just got to receive the submission. And that's on page 45 of the agenda.
So item 7.3 in your agenda is the remission and postponement of the rates policy submissions. 1,039 of the agenda. And the recommendations are A through to D. I'm happy to move the recommendations. Is there a seconder? That's what we received the written submissions on draft remission and postponement. Seconded, Councillor Kramer. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I think we're safe to go offline, close the meeting, and if these two submitters arrive, they can come and present in public forum on the 5th of May. Okay, on that note then, declare the meeting closed and thank everybody for the last couple of days, especially the submitters. It's a big thank you to the staff that have been involved in presenting this and getting this ready. It's been a mammoth task, and certainly, as I said at the start of the meeting, one of the bigger lists of submitters that we've received in the past. So thank you to everyone involved.
Does Jason, you still want some talk?
Yeah,
He's done that.